Hello fellow sim racers. 2019 has finally arrived in Assetto Corsa Competizione, and that means new cars, a new circuit, and a whole host of other changes and improvements. Let's take a look. So then, it all looks pretty good, as you would expect. This is a big update and there's a lot to get through, so I'm going to try and be as concise as possible and break it down into sections. But before we get into the details, this is just a quick reminder that this is a free update for everyone that purchased ACC and not paid DLC. The timing of ACC's original release meant that the 2019 Blancpain GT series had only just got underway, meaning that the content in the game was based on the 2018 season. Kunos promised that the 2019 content would be coming later in the year as a free update and, well, here it is, so let's dive in. Let's start off with the cars because, well, if we're honest, that's why most of us are here. The 2019 update includes 6 new cars: the Audi R8 LMS Evo, the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, the Honda NSX GT3 Evo, and the snappily named Porsche 9912 GT3R are new for 2019 evolutions of cars that previously appeared in ACC, while the final 2 cars are very much new. First of these is the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. Yes, I know the old V12 Vantage is in ACC, but really the only commonality between the 2 cars is the name and the badge. Finally, there's also the McLaren 720S, which has been added by Kunos as a bit of a gift and to bring the McLaren Shadow eSport project into ACC. It will presumably also unlock the ability to drive as that relatively unknown Finnish driver Mika Hakkinen when the Intercontinental GT DLC gets released a little bit later down the line. Seriously, Hakkinen, McLaren, Suzuka, yes please. There's a bit too much to get through to go into each of these cars in detail in this video, so consider this a bit of an overview. First up is the Italian Audi, or to use the name that's written on its birth certificate, the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Externally, the much loved and successful Huracan looks pretty familiar, but under the skin much has changed. Power steering, roll cage, radiators and a new rear wing, suspension and dampers are among the more subtle changes, but the aero and the engine are probably the most obvious in-game. Wind tunnel testing with Dallara has helped make a more predictable platform, addressing the pitch sensitivity of the last generation car and moving the aero balance about 10% further forwards. What this means in game is a more predictable car overall. In particular, the Huracan feels a lot better on turn-in and a bit less nervous in high-pitch situations. Onto the power plant, the tweaked 5.2 litre V10 has been improved to aid drivability and features significant tweak to the power curve, providing more power at a lower RPM. Again with the goal of a more predictable and drivable car. The old Huracan was an incredibly successful platform, and this was mirrored by its popularity in ACC, and I can see the 2019 Evo version being incredibly popular in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Unlike the Lambo, the Audi R8 LMS Evo is a bit of a softer update, and for good reason. The R8 GT3 has been a pretty competitive platform, and in 2018, the Audi teams were overall winners of over twice as many races as any other manufacturer in Blancpain. But the 2019 Evo hasn't replicated that success. Whether that's down to BOP issues or something inherent to the car remains to be seen. The Evo features new front bodywork, an improved gearbox and the usual sort of chassis and packaging improvements that you would expect from an updated car. And in-game, as you would expect, it does feel fairly similar, though perhaps the balance has shifted a little bit more towards the front, based on my limited and completely non-scientific approach to testing. Next up is the Porsche 9912 GT3R, or as I'll be calling it, the Porsche. The last version of the 911 GT3 was very much like a 911 of old in many ways, and that caused some issues. The engine placement got in the way of the underbody aerodynamics, the front suspension was designed more with luggage space in mind, and with the car struggling on the latest generation of Pirelli rubber, things weren't great in 2018 for the Porsches in Blancpain. But the new car features a host of changes under the familiar body shell. Gone are the McPherson struts at the front, replaced with a more conventional double wishbone design. This is coupled with larger front wheels, a new brake supplier and significantly reworked ABS, which makes the on-track and in-game models quite the different beast on turn-in. At the rear of the car, the engine placement has been refined to aid airflow to the diffuser, which is still pretty small by GT3 standards. All in, the new Porsche does seem to have a slightly wider operating window than the previous car, and it's perhaps a little bit more forgiving as well. But the wheelbase is still short, and despite tweaks, the power delivery is very much still focused on the top end, and the weight bias is of course still towards the rear. In short, it's still a Porsche. The new car has been pretty competitive in the real world this year, so let's see how that translates to ACC. I must admit, I've not spent that much time driving the 2016 NSX GT3 and Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's a nice enough car, it drives very nicely in fact, but it's just slow. The new car features the usual sort of tweaks that you would expect from an Evolution. Small aero improvements, more efficient cooling, and a whole host of other small changes designed to improve the balance, drivability, fuel economy and performance. And honestly, to me, in-game it does feel pretty similar. The old car felt good, and so does the new one. And without having time to do some more detailed side-by-side testing, there's not a lot more I can say about that at the moment. And of course, the big question is still yet to be answered. It remains to be seen if this time it's actually fast. I've left the McLaren and the Aston Martin until last because they're completely new designs that haven't been featured in ACC. And as such, I've made a video dedicated to these two, since the subject requires more depth than the few sentences that I have time for here. So if you want to know more about the 720S and the V8 Vantage, then there'll be a link to that video at the end screen of this video, and if you're impatient, there's also a link in the video description. I could make a video dedicated to Zandvoort as well, but this whole thing would start to get messy. So instead, let's take a brief look at the new circuit here. Zandvoort replaces Zolder on the 2019 Blancpain GT Sprint Series calendar, or thanks to the magic of rebranding, I should probably say the Blancpain GT World Challenge Europe calendar. I guess Stefan Rattel, like Porsche, isn't a fan of brevity in names. Back to Zandvoort, and players of the original Assetto Corsa will be very familiar with this place. It's a driver's track, with plenty of challenging corners, adverse camber, bumps, compressions, and less runoff than the average Scalextric track. The team at Kunos have done a predictably great job of replicating it in ACC, warts and all. It looks the part, it feels great to drive, and I suspect if it's anything like the real circuit, it will prove pretty tricky to overtake in GT3 cars. But driving it is still a little bit magic, even if you spend half the lap thinking to yourself, they're seriously going to be bringing Formula 1 here? With the big stuff out of the way, let's get into the details. There's a lot of great stuff coming to version 1.1 update, though not all of it is visually all that exciting. First up, Paul Ricard, Silverstone, Barcelona and Spa all have updated tarmac to match real-world changes, including resurfacings that happened for the 2019 season. This means that the road surface will differ at these tracks depending on which year in the championship you select. This of course will impact lap times. For example, Aris claims the resurfaced Paul Ricard is around a second faster, while Silverstone has lost the edge that new tarmac provides and is now slower than the 2018 version. I think this might be a sim racing first as far as I can remember, and a wonderfully deep detail that really goes to show what can be done in a sim that just focuses down on one series. Moving on, and as many of you have already seen, Kunos have added triple screen support to ACC. This is something they've been working on for a long time and quite sensibly have kept quiet about publicly until they were sure the feature would work properly and reliably. The issue of triple screen support in Unreal is very well documented elsewhere, so I won't go into it here, and all I'll say is that it's great to see this niche but important feature see the light of day. I've not had a chance to test it myself yet, as I migrated away from triples over a year ago. Next up, we have pit stop animations, which look pretty decent. This isn't really a game-changing detail, but it adds to the immersion, and it's a nice surprise bonus to see included later on in the development cycle of a title. Speaking of small improvements, there are a number of small UI tweaks throughout, most of which aren't really interesting enough to talk about here, but I'll mention two specifically. First up is the reworked showroom, which allows you to zoom in and rotate around the cars to get a decent look at them, and it also seems to work with the joypad as well, which is a nice touch. Also added, for those wondering, is a UI filter so you can select between the different seasons and to filter between the core content and the DLC when that comes along. So that's pretty much most of the noteworthy changes that are coming along very shortly to Assetto Corsa Competizione version 1.1. Obviously, in addition to all of the headline grabbing stuff, there's also myriad small changes and optimizations throughout. In terms of content, this is a pretty significant update, and I've been having a lot of fun playing around with the new cars and tracks to make the content for this video. I can't wait for the release to go public to take some of the new content online and really dive deep into some of the new cars in particular. As I said before, if you want to know more about the McLaren and the Aston Martin, then check out my other video. There'll be a link coming up at the end of the titles, or if you can't wait that long, then there's also a link in the video description. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.